Well, let the indefinite detention and torture begin. It hasn't even been a month since President Obama signed the controversial bill into law, and we are now seeing it become a reality. The National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, as it's called, allows the government to detain and torture without trial anyone accused of having ties to terrorism, and that includes U.S. citizens. Now, one Gitmo prisoner has no hope of being released because of this new law. Musab al-Madwani, a Yemeni national, has spent the last 10 years at Guantanamo Bay, where he was repeatedly tortured. His attorney says he was tortured into admitting he was involved in terrorism. He has been fighting to get a trial, but just this month, the Supreme Court ruled that under the new law, he is able to remain detained. I spoke earlier to campaigner for Roots Action, David Swanson, who stated more indefinite detention and torture here in the U.S. is just a few signs of what is to come. Take a listen.
I think it's also not a complete change. The United States has, as you know, long been detaining prisoners under various legal justifications and court rulings and executive orders. No one has been released without the government's decision. Through sheer stalling and various arguments, this has been the policy. And the hypocrisy could not be more stark as the president of Yemen, guilty of similar offenses, is brought here on the claim that it's for medical treatment, as this resolution on Syria argues, among other things, that they must release arbitrarily detained prisoners, as if the United States were going to do that. And of course, bigger than Guantanamo is Bagram, where the president worsened this bill with a signing statement declaring he needed no legal process whatsoever to detain people forever and ever at Bagram, and immediately received resistance from President Karzai, who said, turn them all over within a month.
And, you know, when President Obama signed off on this bill, he did say that he had some reservations regarding certain provisions on the regulation and detention of suspects. And 1 month later, those concerns are already being used to keep people behind bars.
Well, there was a great deal of misunderstanding in this regard, as the president himself had insisted on these powers, insisted on no exclusion for U.S. citizens, and wanted the freedom not to ship all prisoners into military detention, but to detain them and handle them through non-military, CIA and other means as well, which he called flexibility, which some people might call tyranny. And so he had the bill worsened both in Congress and in the conference committee, and further again through his signing statement, which was obscured by the fact that in a very strange and unprecedented manner, he also, in that same signing statement, promised not to use some of the powers that he was hereby creating for all future presidents. Of course, that's not legally binding. He will use these powers if he sees fit, as will his successors.
So you're saying President Obama has already broken some of the promises that he made?
Well, to the extent that people got the impression that he was concerned about being given the power to detain anyone, or in particular U.S. citizens, understanding, of course, that this is the very same president who openly asserts and has exercised the power to kill anyone, including U.S. citizens, including juveniles. That was a misunderstanding, and he certainly has gone back on this, which echoes the experience of his last presidential election, during which many people understood him to be making promises that went far beyond anything he actually explicitly made, and then were disappointed when he went back on those so-called promises.
Now, we are already seeing the consequences of this bill. For critics and people concerned about how this is an attack on our rights here in the U.S., is there any hope of repealing some of the more controversial aspects of this bill?
Well, there's always hope, although hope has been given a horrible name by this president. It's going to take a major movement that does not bow down before either party or any elected official, or sit on its hands for the better part of a year because there's an election, but actually pushes in a principled, uncompromising, strategic, and nonviolent way to change these things. And there is the beginning of that kind of movement. But these issues are not being discussed on U.S. television networks. So thank you for doing so.
David, why aren't these issues being discussed on these networks? We're hearing all these debates, one debate after another. We're not hearing too much about this. Why not?
Well, one obvious answer is that when the two big parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, agree on something, it's not considered a controversy and it's not considered a debate or something for the news. There also is very little desire to offend those who are desired guests for talk shows. There's a great tendency to appeal to those individuals, and there's a lack of investigative reporting. And so among the confused and bewildered on this topic are members of the media themselves.
And that was David Swanson, campaigner for Roots Action.